It's time for This Week in WordPress, episode number 158, entitled Wixing Your Metaphors. It was recorded on Monday, the 12th of April, 2021. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Paul Lacey, but this week I'm joined by Anne McCarthy and Joe Casabona as we talk about the WordPress news. We begin with some sad news as we commemorate the passing of Puneet Sahlot from Ideabox, and then we move on to some more happy news. We talk about the fact that Wix has got into trouble with the WordPress community for a fairly bizarre and unusual advertising campaign. Anne and Joe get into a conversation about full site editing, where it's headed and how you can take part. Cadence has been bought by iThemes. What does this mean for people who already own Cadence and the future of the product? We also talk about the Page Builder Summit, which is an event coming up fairly soon. In the near future, you'll be able to subscribe to that. We also highlight A/B split tests plugin update, and we talk about an event which Paul Lacey is doing later today. By the time you listen to this, it will all be recorded. It's all coming up next on This Week in WordPress. This Week in WordPress is brought to you by Cloudways. Cloudways is a managed cloud hosting platform that ensures simplicity, performance, and security. It offers cloud servers from 5 different cloud providers that you can manage through its intuitive platform. Some of the features include 24/7 support, free migrations, and dedicated firewalls. Check it out at cloudways.com. And by A/B Split Test. Do you want to set up your A/B split tests in record time, like in a couple of minutes? Use your existing pages and test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder and the WordPress block editor. You can check it out and get a free demo at absplittest.com. Hello. Good afternoon. It's Monday the 12th of April. It's This Week in WordPress, 2 p.m. UK time. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend Paul Lacey, who's the co-host of the show. And I don't know, Paul, if you want to take over the introductions for our 2 lovely guests today.
Sure. Well, we've got a repeat of a couple of weeks ago, haven't we? So it doesn't normally happen like that we have the same 2 panelists on at the same time. So Anne and Joe, it's not normally like that. So Anne, if you're wondering if Joe's a permanent panelist and Joe, you're wondering if Anne is, that they're not. It's just but it's a really good coincidence because we've got some great stuff to talk about. And so to give you both an introduction that probably won't do you justice, we have Anne, who is Developer Relations Wrangler working for Automatic, and you are focused apparently on the WordPress.org space and leading the full site outreach program efforts, which we're going to talk about today. And we've also got Joe Casabona, who is a podcaster, educator, developer, and helps people launch podcasts and create content, and has recently switched to using Wix.
That's right.
That was good.
Yeah, that was good. We'll find out more about that.
That's
story.
fake news.
That is fake news. That's actual fake news. That's the first real piece of fake news.
I couldn't hold it in for too long. Yeah.
That's right. The tweet's already gone viral, and the correction will not.
Yeah, nice. Just before we begin, if you wouldn't mind, it would be really helpful. Just move away from this screen just for a moment and share what we're doing over on whatever platform you're using. If you go to wpbuilds.com/live, you can find us over there. wpbuilds.com/live. That you've got to be logged into Google to comment, but we'd appreciate it if you did. Or if you're in our Facebook group, you can go over there, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, and just hunt around until you see the live video, which will be playing somewhere, shape or form. Comments are open. If you'd like to give us a comment, feel free to do so. Thank you to those people who drop in and give us a comment. Sometimes we talk about them. Sometimes we just sort of leave them out because we just want to keep the conversation going. But we're going to talk today about the WordPress news for the week beginning. Now, what was it? I think it was the 5th of April. So during the last 7 days, and actually quite a lot has happened during the last 7 days. And we'll come to that in just a moment because I'm going to share my screen first. Let me see if I can get this right because I often get it wrong. There we go. I think I deployed that successfully. wpbuilds.com is the website where we produce all of the content and we put it up there. We've got a podcast episode you can see, number 224, over there at the moment. That's probably all I'm going to say this week. Let's just get stuck right into it with our first piece. And the first piece today is not what we wanted to talk about. This is something that occurred. I discovered it on Facebook, I believe it was last night, but I feel it probably deserves top of the show. But I am going to give it over to Paul.
Is a tough one. We had some sad news. A friend of the show, Paneet Sahalot, passed away yesterday in a car accident. I'm never good at speaking about these things, so thanks, Nathan, for passing that over to me. But
I'm sorry.
A really good guy. It's all right. A really good guy, and he'll be greatly missed. And sorry, Paneet. I know you're listening out there somewhere up there. Sorry, I'm doing such a bad job of trying to give you a couple of words here, but I think we wanted to dedicate this episode to Paneet. And so hopefully it'll get better than I'm doing at this moment.
No, it's okay. It's hard. I actually texted Paul last night, and I think maybe
I was working on his plugin at the time as well. I was literally using his product, which is PowerPack. I think most people know if you use Beaver Builder or Elementor that it's got an add-on pack called PowerPack, and it gives you some extra features in Beaver Builder or into Elementor. And man, it was so shocking to hear that. Really, really young guy, really good hero in WordPress, and done a lot of good things. And you only hear good things said about him. So,
yeah, thank you, Paul. Sorry, I didn't realise you were going to struggle to do that one. But I actually met him at WordCamp in Berlin. I was lucky enough to meet him. We did actually sit down and have a beer together. I know that a few people that I know did the same thing, and it's hard to judge somebody in the space of a few minutes, but every interaction that I had with him on Facebook Messenger, where it largely was very cordial. He was a very, very humble is probably the word I want to reach for. Really felt like a very humble guy. And then when I met him in person, that sort of veneer proved to be true. He really was an extremely humble guy. He's done quite a lot in the short space of time he was working with the Beaver Builder plugin that he's got. And he just didn't big himself up or mention it or try to be pushy. He was just very polite, deferential, and just a really nice chap. So in as much as we don't dedicate these episodes, we're dedicating this one. So Paneet, I hope all is well, as it were. If Anne or Joe want to contribute to that, that's fine. If not, we'll just crack on with the rest of the show.
I'll just say that I hope someone carries on his work. When Alex Mills died, that was one thing that I really appreciated, is that people were dedicated to carrying on his legacy and his work. And I think that's the beauty of the WordPress community, is that can happen, and his impact can live on beyond his life. And I'm all about feeling. So I love that you all have opened your hearts to sharing about him. I think that's really probably will mean a lot to the people who know him well.
Yeah, his company tweeted something really nice with a really great picture of him. So I didn't know him personally. I knew his work, and it's always a shame to lose somebody, especially, so young and so dedicated to his craft. So
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There's some good podcast episodes, I think, out there. Sorry, now I've got my act back together now. I know you interviewed him, I think, for WP Builds some years ago, Nathan, as far as I'm aware.
I interviewed him for WP Builds, and I also did an interview with him over on WP and Up, where we talked on the WP Build side, we talked about the product, and on the WP and Up side, we talked about life and the way that his approach to business and how it might differ in the subcontinent than it does in, say, Europe or North America. And it was it was a bit of an eye-opener, actually. It was really nice. And again, speaking to a man who really did he likened repeatedly the business to a big family, which I thought was quite nice. And although that kind of probably could easily roll off the tongue, he demonstrated over and over again during that podcast things which were demonstrative of how business is different there than it is here, and the way that they sort of share meal times and things like that. So if you become part of their team, you become part of the wider kind of family and do things like share meal times and go to each other's weddings and all of those kind of things. So yeah, it was nice.
I think one of the fun things we all remember from PowerPack and Planet was his kind of perceived war with Brainstorm Force, the other company that also had a add-on pack for Beaver Builder. It was UABB versus PowerPack, and there was some quite public, sort of healthy competition that used to go on in some of the forums, and it would push both of those products forward. And we did, so far as we know, Sujay and Puneet, Sujay is the CEO of Brainstorm Force, were pretty good friends by the end of it. So there was a lot of healthy competition. They pushed each other's products forward, but they were good friends in the end. So that was good to hear. And when you see this kind of, the Wix versus WordPress, the competition there, sometimes you've got to push those things aside. I remember that there's people working at these companies representing them. So competition is all good, but, keep it classy.
Nice.
And those guys did.
Yeah, nice. Okay, let's move on. Get on with the sort of show as it normally happens. And you mentioned Wix and Squarespace. So let's jump right in, because this is such an interesting thing that's happened during the course of this week. I believe Joe is the best placed to take on this story, because he actually is in possession of a pair of expensive headphones. That sounds like crazy talk, but I don't know, Joe, if you just want to sort of tell us what this story's all about. I'm showing WP Tavern at the minute, but we'll shortly, as soon as you get into it, I'll show your post all about it.
Yeah, so I guess to give a quick high-level overview of what happened, back in January, a representative from Wix started reaching out to technology influencers, was the term he used. It was a lot of people in the WordPress space, me included, and he said that, or they said that they want to send technology influencers a special kind of swag thing for a marketing concept, a unique marketing concept. So I decided that 2021 would be the year of opportunity for me. I would have said no to this. Like, I don't need another t-shirt that I'm not going to wear. But I said, why not? I have a PO box and I'll have to give the person my home address. So I said yes. And a few months later, people started getting these packages labeled top secret. Here's a message from you from WP. And you open it up and it is a pair of $400 Bose noise canceling headphones. So not a t-shirt. And if you scan the QR code, you're brought to a website. It's this fella pretending to be WordPress. And he's saying, like, Wix is launching a smear campaign against me. And we know each other. We've been through it all. I don't want you to believe any of it. And as all of these people started tweeting these headphones, I'm going to say a negative ad campaign, right? It highlights the bad stuff in WordPress, or the perceived bad things about WordPress, started coming out. And the reaction, even before these ads came out, was pretty strong. Why is Wix sending people headphones? Do they think that I can be bought? Was something I read a lot. Like, I'm not going to start using Wix because you sent me headphones. And so I'm a recipient of these headphones, but there are a few things that I wanted to unpack here, and which I do in this blog post, right? Is Wix bad for the negative campaign? And unfortunately, negative campaigns work, right? I read a book called Contagious by Jonah Berger. Fantastic book. And he talks about the things that get people to share. And it's the things that tap into the emotions, right? So the really, really happy, right? I saw a video of these glasses that were made for babies who are blind, and then they could see. And like that reaction, like I cried. I'm not going to front. That's like shareable content, right? It makes you feel really good. But the negative stuff also works. And we've seen how effective that is. And so I think that they identified pain points in WordPress. I don't think they're lying. I didn't watch all of the ads, but they're not lying about I assume they did a bunch of user research, right? So they said, what problems do you have with WordPress? And then they use those talking points. Were some of the videos tone deaf, maybe a little bit, right? There's one where like the WordPress character is like in an abusive relationship with his user, and they're in therapy, and in a year where record numbers of adults, including myself, sought therapy for anxiety. I think they could have made that point better, right? I say like they could have showed a user update their WordPress site, and then their whole day is just blown up because they're fixing a broken WordPress site because they updated it. So there's that portion of it, right? I think the ads are tone deaf, but they definitely know who they're targeting. And on that note, they are not targeting the long-term WordPress users like me, right? They sent me headphones because they knew I would tweet about it, and it got people talking about it. And they could have spent way more money on like a Super Bowl ad, right?
Yeah.
Where it was like one and done, but now it's a week later and we're still talking about it. That said, the WordPress community is justified in their frustration, right? It's never fun to be on the other end of criticism, but I say in my post, I think it's a little bit hypocritical, right? It's okay for me, a WordPress user, to smugly say, why are you using Squarespace when you can own your platform, right? Or why are you using that hosting company? They're bad. Or the whole Jamstack drama that happened in August, right? So if you're gonna dish it out, you should be able to take it. And on that same token, our reaction should not be anger, right? In Matt's post, he called Wix a roach motel. I don't think that was the best reaction. What we can do is say, okay, maybe WordPress is hard to update, but we are working on that, right? In 5.6, it's a lot easier to update WordPress. Okay, maybe the security stuff is hard. We have a site health checker now where we talk about those things. And in 5.7, we rolled out easy transfer to SSL. And Matt rightly points out that like you can't export in Wix, right? That's a pain point that we've identified that we have a good solution for, because ultimately that's what we care about, that, right? This is actually right on the screen right now. We do care about democratizing publishing, and it's why we're open source, and it's why exporting data is so important. And so if someone goes negative, we should highlight our positives, right? So I think the community reaction could have been better. Wix was a little bit tone deaf, but I think that we also don't know how much they spent, right? We don't know, and we don't know what their key performance indicators are either, right? Their KPIs. So if it was to get people talking about Wix, this is a hugely successful campaign. If it's to get the people they sent headphones to switch to Wix, probably an ultimate failure. But I don't think that was the case.
I just find the whole thing extremely bizarre. I have to ask, Joe, what headphones have you got on right now?
So right now I have my studio monitors on, right? These are the, the DT770 Pro. So these, you just saw how like terribly long my hair is. So these plug right into my interface so I can monitor my audio. When especially when the kids are awake, I do have noise canceling headphones. And to be honest, I have the Sony WH million numbers 4 or whatever, the latest Sony headphones. And I'm a little disenchanted, I'll say, by them, because multiple device switching is a little difficult. And I was seriously considering getting the AirPods Max. Even though they're obnoxiously expensive. And then I got these and I was like, great. I was kind of looking at new headphones and now I got them. So I'm happily using them. And that was the other thing, I think it's a little, I don't generally like to use the word privileged or whatever. We all have like different backgrounds and things like that. But anybody who's like, well, oh, you sent me these headphones, I'm not even going to use them. Like, dude, somebody sent you a $400 gift. If you don't want it, like, re-gift it.
Yeah.
Don't be, I teach my toddler, be grateful when someone gives you something, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give my Sony headphones to my brother, who doesn't have the same multi-device switching problem that I do.
Put a WordPress sticker in when you send them.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely.
Yeah, the thing that I sat down and did a back of the postage postcard kind of calculation, and I figured based upon what I knew of the numbers, and I actually think I worked it out on the basis of them costing £300. I think it was the cost of the equipment was £30,000. Which is not an inconsiderable amount of money. This is kind of like you can cover a salary of a teacher for an entire year for this kind of money. And I think that's where it sticks in my throat is it's okay. Like you said, Joe, if purely looking for the hashtag Wix being spread 1 billion times, slam dunk success, total win. From the point of view of squandered money, this is a really good example of that, because I would be more or less 100% certain to say not one of the people they sent them to even went to the Wix homepage to see what it was all about. But that can't have been the point. I'm just really curious. It must have been a play on just getting some eyeballs on a hashtag, or getting people to just discuss them and make them relevant for a couple of weeks. And here we are.
I do think it worked too, because I mean, I think Joe, you touched on this in the post, it's like when you step outside of, the always WordPressers, like you hear this a lot. And I actually, when I was doing freelance work, I lost a nonprofit. I say I lost, but like this nonprofit one day called me up. I'd been volunteering with them for free for like 5 or 6 years. And they switched to Wix, and I tried to convince them. I tried to tell them all about open source. I had an hour-long call with the board. Like I was had a PowerPoint presentation, and they were like, look, we don't want to deal with the headaches of WordPress. And I think a lot about the Maya Angelou quote of people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think about that in the context of WordPress. Like, how does using WordPress feel? And the thing that I think is so tricky with this is open source, you don't feel things when you're using open source. you don't necessarily have something tangible in your hands. And until a decision point happens, until your site goes down, until you have to migrate, until whatever it is. But for 90% of the time, you're not feeling like, yes, I'm using open source. You're just feeling, I have to update my site. I have to change the header and whatever makes it easier. And I think this is one thing Matt has spoken about is we need to make open source better than the alternatives and the closed source alternatives. And to me, I see this as a great chance to step up. And one thing that gives me hope is Josefa actually posted about this last week. I think she's looking to bring in some marketing professionals to help the WordPress community and to help the marketing team, especially as now we're at 40% of the web or whatever it is. How do we have control of our narrative, and what is the WordPress voice when it comes to marketing? And I don't think it's going to be anything like Wix, which gives me a lot of pride. I think this is my biggest takeaway was I'm very proud to be a part of the WordPress community, and not, I feel bad for folks who might work at Wix and might not agree with the ads. I did watch all of them as well. And they're pretty brutal. I'm also in therapy. So I was like, whoa, that was just really a weird line to cross. And the whole idea of playing with an abusive relationship, especially when domestic abuse is on the rise right now. I just was like, this is really, some people are trapped at home with an actual abusive relationship. You need to be really careful with those kinds of ads. But they did touch on the pain points of how WordPress feels. And you can't, to me, that's a chance to step up and do better and to kind of pay attention to that. It kind of was like they gave us free information of oh yeah, people still are worried about security or updates or what have you, even though Core just rolled out auto updates and has a whole new system where you don't have to worry about that. That they were still able to play with that dynamic, which was really interesting.
I wonder if the actual ads themselves cost significantly more than the cost of the headphones. I'm imagining
that's a good point. Yeah,
and that must have cost a bucket load of money to get people to, actors in a room and a film set and all of that kind of stuff must have been really expensive.
Yeah, especially depending on when they shot it too. But I just keep thinking a 30-second Super Bowl ad, which I'm pretty sure they've run before, right? Would have cost them millions, tens of, right?
Yeah.
And I want to touch on your point because I think it's really good that we're bringing in WordPress is bringing in marketing professionals, because The messaging is so important. I read an interesting piece after the 2020 election about messaging and what works and what falls flat. And like Joe Biden's messaging really worked in 2016. Trump's worked because it said "Make America Great Again." They made it about the voters, whereas in previous campaigns, right, the "I'm with her," like Hillary Clinton's "I'm with her" for a while, made it more about the candidate than about the people. And I think when we say, but WordPress is open source, we're making it more about WordPress. Whereas we need to say, but hey, you won't be locked in, right? Like you can move your stuff. Or
I always try to describe it as like the life of your site. And
yes,
Matt was like, but that means there's a death. And I'm like, okay, fine. But like the idea is that like it can grow with you. I tried to sell him on this at one point. And yeah, but I love, that's how I explain it. So I'm like, if you start with just a blog and then you want to move to a store and then you blow up and you have like this amazing, whatever translated in 5 different languages, like you can do all of that with WordPress and people get that clicks where it's like, right. Oh, cool. Like, be like having a shoe that grows with you throughout your life. Yeah. Like, that's amazing. Of course I'd invest in that, but it's hard like, to feel it,
Yeah. And that paints like a super optimistic picture, right? Like you're here now, but you can be here. And that's what WordPress does for you. Right.
I wonder if
they should just hire us.
Yeah. The pair of you. Yeah, done. Yeah, it sounds good. I wonder if they'd have paid for a teacher's salary for a year. Would we be talking about it? If they put out a press release saying Wix has paid for a teacher's salary in such and such a school, it'd be like, okay, thanks. That's really good.
Yeah, moving on. Interesting.
Yeah. But it worked. We've got a couple of comments here. Chris Hughes saying that it's interesting that he managed to get a salty reply out of Matt, probably the icing on the cake for them. Yeah, it's interesting that. I wonder if the fact that they did get the salty reply from Matt, and that if you see the post on mattma.tt, go and have a look at that. It doesn't sound like the Matt that we're familiar with. It almost sounds like he had to sort of constrain himself before he hit publish and possibly retype some things. It sounded like he was bordering on getting a bit cross, which you don't normally see in the public arena with Matt. Paul, we've left you out of this one. Did you have anything you wish to throw in?
I was just enjoying listening to the discussion.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the money spent on the campaign, I think this year and last year, there hasn't been so many avenues for marketing budgets to be spent in the traditional way. So it doesn't surprise me that there's some more creative and more kind of guerrilla sort of marketing tactics going on. And, it probably was quite... I didn't actually watch the videos. I didn't watch hardly any of them. I think I watched like the first 10 seconds of one of them and I just knew what it was all kind of be about. But I think that it feels like this is the sort of marketing campaign idea that happened at, Christmas party 2019 or something, when, the CEO was drunk or something and there was a stupid idea and they just hired, someone's cousin as an intern and gave them a job to do something creative and crazy. And this is what happened in the end. The thing is, I mean, a couple of years ago, I was at an international cricket match between England and India at Edgbaston in Birmingham. And the entire pitch in between plays had GoDaddy projected on it. So the money, I can't even imagine the money that it must be spent to have that, which is broadcast around the world on TV as well, having the entire pitch, having the logo on there and everything. So I think like the 30,000, I know we can equate it to different things like teacher salaries and much better things that money in general can be spent on, but it doesn't, it's not something that matters to the companies because they're competing for to make their platform as well known as possible, and social buzz is a big thing, and they did a good job of making a lot of noise about Wix, and like Joe said, they've not really probably converted anyone, but they got in the conversation for over a week. And the bizarre thing was, I helped a friend, one of Lindsay, my wife's friends, actually, Kelly, with her website just this week, last week actually, and her website is on Wix. And actually, what she wanted to do was she needed another domain pointing out the website so that 2 domains would end up on the website, and then also have an email address set up with the new domain. And I was, I'm the nominated person to help with that kind of thing. And I, jumped on a Zoom call with Kelly. We logged into her Wix account, and guess what? You could do the domain within the panel easily, and they've hooked up with Google Mail. You can even just create your Google Mail account right there in the Wix panel, and then there's your website. We didn't actually need to edit the website, thankfully, because I know last time I did help her with that, it was awful. The Wix user experience was terrible, but the onboarding experience for the other things a business owner needs to do in and around just the techie bits that people like us are interested in, and go, oh, don't use this page builder because, it leaves shortcodes. Oh, don't use this because you can't do that. The business owner doesn't care about that. They're just like, I want my email hooked up to that, and I want the domain going there. And, oh, today I've heard Web Vitals. What does that mean? Can we make the website faster? And obviously that, so I don't know where I'm going with this point. But also I'll say that I've also got a pair of Sony XM4s, Joe, and they're not as good as the bows which I'm wearing here, which I didn't get given. I bought these for switching between different devices, and that's why I'm wearing these, because I was having trouble with the audio just before we came on, and I knew I'll put the bows on and I'll just be connected to my laptop, whatever. But yeah, that's a different point. But yeah, the point on the platform, right? Wix has got a platform and it is consistent. It might not be very good from what a lot of us think, but they can improve it, and so can Squarespace and so can Shopify. Now, one of the items that we're moving on to in a minute is around Cadence getting bought out by iThemes or Liquid Web. And we can move to that in a minute, but whereas, a lot of users come to WordPress and they try and build their ingredients together, they get into trouble if they don't have the knowledge. But Wix doesn't need to have a fight with Matt Mullenweg. Wix needs to be fighting against the hosts that are creating the platforms that will genuinely compete with Wix and Squarespace and push them out of the market. Because as soon as those platforms exist where you can do everything, and you've got the block editor or the built-in page builder or whatever you've got, then Wix is going to start looking like it's in trouble more than ever, I think. So
we'll round this one off quickly with Lee Jackson's comment. He said there's room for Wix, and it seems to me its target demographic are people who want to do it themselves as much as they can. WordPress excels where developers and designers use it to deliver a quality service where people want to pay for others to do the hard work. Wix are creating a fight because it's a classic marketing tactic. That is all. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Should we segue into the iThemes
everyone
one right
wins,
now?
though.
Yeah.
In this situation, WordPress gets attention, Wix gets attention. Everybody's attention. The big loser here was Squarespace, probably.
Yeah. Oh,
Sorry, if Squarespace want to send me some headphones,
there's a Squarespace podcast right now making that very point, I'm sure. Shall we segue, cut a few out, possibly because of the time, and go straight to the Cadence one? We can come back to the other ones that we've got on the roster if we need to. This totally caught me by surprise. I'm sure that if you've been in the WordPress space for any length of time, last couple of years, there's this theme blocks suite which has had a meteoric rise, more so I think than just about any other company that I can think of. Maybe Elementor fits in that bill, but I've heard more and more about Cadence as the weeks have gone on, and I was pretty sure that it would be a fairly valuable property by now. We had Ben Rittner on the podcast about a year ago, and just a year ago, it was him and his sister. And I know that is now no longer the case. Anyway, during the last week, I don't know how long this has been negotiated. I don't know how much money changed hands, but I'm imagining that Cadence is worth quite a bit based upon the sort of journey that they've had recently. They've sold to iThemes, and this took me by surprise because I just didn't see iThemes as being relevant in this space anymore. I know that years ago they had their own builder technology. I think in fact it was called Builder, if I remember right. They had a picture of a hard hat, didn't they, as their platform. But they've bought Cadence. If you go to the iThemes post that you can see here, then you'll hear all about it. It's a sort of acquisition. They're acquiring the people. As always, the case is stated that they're hoping not to disrupt anything, that people who've got current memberships can go on. I actually have a kind of lifetime one, so I'm hoping that that's going to be the case. And just quite shocked. And then Joe, earlier, before we hit record, and Paul as well, informed me, of course, that iThemes has a big parent in the background, and it's Flywheel. Have I said that? Is that the right one?
Liquid Web.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. As I was saying it, I knew I'd got it wrong. Anyway, Liquid Web. Fascinating story. I've no idea what amount of money changed hands, but if you're in this space, it just goes to show blocks are hot, really hot at the moment. So the floor is open. Anybody that wants to dive in, go for it.
I would say I don't necessarily think it's blocks that is the reason as such. There is another article that we've partnered with this article, which is a recent podcast on the UGurus website by Brent Weaver, and it's an interview with Brian Gardner, who was the founder of Studio Press, who were acquired by WP Engine approximately 2 years ago. And he talks in this interview a lot about that it wasn't that, let's say you go back 10 years when something like Studio Press started and iThemes started, because Studio Press and iThemes were big competitors to each other, that they were starting these companies to grow and not with an idea to sell out to a hosting company or something like that. And in fact, iThemes has gone to Liquid Web and Studio Press has gone to WP Engine. And Brian is talking 2 years on from that acquisition, now that he's left the whole situation completely now. And he's talking about how these hosting companies are, what I said a minute ago, looking to build platforms. So if you pop back onto the iThemes page again, Nathan, just for a sec, you can see that they have hosting. Back up a minute, sorry. They have a backup solution, they have security solution, they have a dashboard sync, they've got a plugin suite, they've got training documents, they've acquired Restrict Content Pro recently, so I wouldn't be surprised to see more things. And to me, iThemes is basically Liquid Web's talent agency now. I just see iThemes as a brand that had some people with huge knowledge about the whole ecosystem. Liquid Web bought them, and iThemes' job now is to go and start making those deals and bringing those people in and building that platform, so that Liquid Web, a bit like GoDaddy, has got a deal with Automatic for some of the WooCommerce stuff, so you can get some of those things built into that platform. Liquid Web has got stuff built into this now. If you buy WP Engine, you get the Genesis framework, you get the Atomic, I think they're called the Genesis
Atomic
blocks now.
Genesis
maybe,
blocks,
Genesis
blocks,
so there's this platform stuff getting built, and there's going to be more and more of it, because at the moment, and then you've got Elementor on the flip side, who instead of being acquired by a host, look like they're trying to build a hosting aspect to their thing with a cloud, much like WP MU have done as well. So you can just see that the financial side of the industry is at such a critical point at the moment. And that's how I see it. I just see that this is just another example of the platform building, and the hosting company will put a lot of money into this. And I think that the products will probably improve, because I imagine Ben has been juggling all sorts of jobs while he's been kind of building this up in the last year, and he and his team can get back to building the features again. And I hope, anyway.
Joe, before we press record, I feel that you said that you had some input on this because you maybe knew the teams around this. Was that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been following Liquid Web in general pretty closely since Chris Lemma joined in. From there, they built a managed WordPress platform. Then they built a managed WooCommerce platform. Then they acquired iThemes. And iThemes, Cadence comes hot off the heels, right, of, or I guess lukewarm off the heels of acquiring the acquisition of Restrict Content Pro and WP Complete, which is this sort of LMS-esque thing where you can allow course creation without having the full kind of Lifter or LearnDash experience. So iThemes does offer hosting at a relative cheaper price than Liquid Web or Nexus, right? Liquid Web also owns Nexus. And so I think probably Liquid Web Nexus has the managed WooCommerce bit. iThemes probably moving into some sort of educational or membership space. And this is their MO, right? The iThemes membership gets you all of the plugins, but it also gets you the training side of things. I just did a 9-hour training session with them over 3 days for their members only. So I think that if we look at iThemes a year from now, they'll probably have some sort of offering where iThemes hosting, you get Cadence, which I think was a smart move, right? Because it's like essentially a Gutenberg native page builder. You get Restrict Content Pro and you get WP Complete, and then you can build a great membership or course site right in iThemes. So that's I think, if I had to guess, right? And we see the same thing happening, right? It's kind of like a blueprint, right? WP Engine bought Flywheel, and then they bought Studio Press. GoDaddy bought Jilt and all of Skyverge, right? So all of their WooCommerce offerings and things like that. So, I think that, Paul, as you said, this is the direction we're moving in. Hosting companies are becoming platforms. If you want bare hosting, go with Linode or DigitalOcean. If you want an easy way to manage a complex WordPress site, you go with one of these hosts that we've just mentioned.
Yeah, good point.
One of the big concerns that, I was about to say, what's been on my mind is moving between. So I used to work on VaultPress, which is a backup and restore solution. And sometimes you could use it to migrate hosts. And sometimes things would go wrong because the host would have some sort of weird configuration that we'd have to fix on the other side. But in all of this, if everyone's building their own platform, how do we maintain the promise of open source where you have control of your content and you can move it around? And I was really happy to see how Cadence is so intentionally made sure it's compatible with the Gutenberg and the core editor, because I think that's a key part of this. But you could see differences happen where if a platform wanted to kind of go more into a direction where it's harder to move and you'd have to continue to use their products, it makes me nervous. So for anyone listening who's on the other side of these things, I'd encourage everyone to think about movement between, especially even movement too, right? Because you could be moving into a host. How easy do you make it for that to happen? But yeah, my brain immediately went to, oh my gosh, how would migrating a site go?
Yeah, because it does speak of sort of siloed versions of WordPress, doesn't it? If you go over here, because you've got the membership, the iThemes membership platform, or you go over here, you've got something else, and over here is something else. It makes that a bit difficult. But I guess it's Wix.
Right. It's like, how do we avoid doing that to ourselves, and how do we make sure we're fulfilling the promise of open source? Because my dad actually got, I'm not going to say which one, but he got stuck on a marketing style platform, and it was almost impossible to move him. It was based on WordPress, but it was built on top, and I had to spend hours trying to get basically a backup and then translate the backup into something that I could use to restore to a different site. So it happens internally, and it's something I think to be mindful of with these sorts of things popping up.
Yeah, I'm guessing though that the price will be, you won't have to pay for Cadence or Restrict Content Pro. You'll just pay in a sense, let's say it's $29 or something like that. You pay this one fee on a monthly basis, which is very profitable for the hosting company, but all of the other stuff just gets bundled in. And if you've used a managed WordPress host, you know what it looks like. They've got their own little icons in the dashboard, and they have their caching and everything thrown in there. And there's a membership button pre-installed, and you're off to the races. Yeah, it looks like if you're an iThemes user and you were in some way using their themes, they are going to sort of sunset all of those. I can't remember the date. I've got a feeling it's like a year off or something like that. So hopefully anybody still using the iThemes side of things to theme. Seems funny, doesn't it? iThemes, and yet we haven't heard about them doing theming for the longest time.
I think they say that in the article. They're like, I know we've been away from themes.
That's a very 2007 name, isn't it? Because came out around the same time as the iPhone and then iThemes.
Yes.
Yeah. Naming, I mean, that's not a criticism. Naming is hard.
Yeah.
But
that's an interesting story. Well, congratulations to Ben anyway. I'm sure Ben and his team have profited mightily from that. And honestly, when I interviewed him, he was a thoroughly nice guy. So good luck to you, Ben. I hope it all works out for the best. Okay, the next one, which is totally related to this. Paul, do you want to lead on the? It probably won't be a very long piece, but the sort of connected piece about toolset.
Yeah, it's just seen, and this nicely sort of moves us in a minute onto full site editing. We've got Toolset, which is a plugin that gives you kind of custom fields, custom post type creation, plus custom taxonomy creation. So let's say you want to create a bookshop or something like that, and you want your ISBN number in there and different fields about books, and you don't want books to be pages or posts. You want them to be a section in WordPress called books. Well, Toolset allows you to do that, and it's been around for a long, long time. It kind of just went. Everyone was kind of stopped talking about Toolset for quite a while, but they are pretty much they've been leading the way for a long time with the block editor in terms of they've just rewritten their entire product to use the block editor for all its layout tools, because it used to have a layer of data structure and it used to have a presentation layer, and it had its own interface for doing that, which required you to know a little bit of code. But they've switched in the last couple of years to using the block editor and investing a lot of time in that. So Toolset is even more low code than it ever has been before. And it just so happens that an article came out that it's now connected its dynamic data sources to the majority of the useful cadence blocks that you would be interested in connecting data to, apart from apparently the button block, which everybody is apparently in the comments here saying, hey, can we have, because clearly you would want a dynamic source link into a button that might be in a database and link into something else. Apparently that's coming, but it was complicated for some reason. But they seem to be really leading the way as a third party to the whole Gutenberg project in terms of giving us the possibility to do things like create search results, create post templates for different custom post types, search boxes, 404 pages, all this kind of stuff. They are leading the way on that, I think, for in terms of being able to use the block editor as for an enterprise type level website potentially.
I'm just curious as to the fact that a company like Toolset, who create custom post types, custom fields, and all of that kind of stuff, there's a lot more going on, isn't there? It's a fairly robust suite of tools if you want to more or less point and click. And well, like you say, Paul, there's a little bit going on in there that you need to learn. But I'm just curious that they've jumped ship into a block suite as opposed to building out their own blocks. I know they've got their own blocks. I actually installed it just to see what it looked like, and there's half a dozen of their own blocks, but they've decided to sort of offload the presentation layer to what they presumably believe is somebody's path for the future of how people
they've done that historically though, haven't they? Years ago they were one of the first integrations with Beaver Builder. I remember your video.
I remember that.
Do you remember your video on that? That was absolute classic video on the Beaver Builder toolset integration. And
was that the one where I just constantly got it wrong?
Yeah, okay, it was brilliant. You remember that one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
But they, you would use Toolset, and there was a list of themes that they'd made sure worked really, really well with their system. And I think that's what they're doing now. They're looking at the popular block sets, because it's not just Cadence. They've linked up with a few others, but I think adding the Cadence blocks into the mix is a big win for their users to take on a theme like that, which is known for being really good with things like WooCommerce and an LMS type site. So if you think, I want to try a new site, I want to maybe WooCommerce or a bit of an LMS, but I want to use Toolset. You see all the, they've ticked all the boxes, and you can give that a go with confidence that both sides have done a bit of integration work of each other. So it's progress, I think. That's what it is.
I'm curious if Anne ever breaks out a thing like Toolset or ACF or anything like that and plays with it?
I try to play around with those different, like how people will try to accomplish the same thing that you could accomplish with the block editor. I do like looking at that kind of stuff because it is important to see, like, why would someone choose this over going straight Gutenberg, and a lot of it is just easier setup, especially with ACF blocks. Like that's a big one that I see people reference where they're like, oh, if you don't want to deal with that, just use this. And it's like, how do we make it easier to go kind of core first,
Joe, anything to add? Joe's having a play with the camera there. Hope all's well, Joe.
My camera overheated, so I had to go to the cam,
Okay. Well, I won't pester you because it looks like you're fiddling with the tech. Unless you've got something to say, I'll just press on.
No, I think everybody made really good points. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what else Cadence ends up doing in the near future.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on in that case. Paul sort of mentioned this just a moment ago. I feel this is one for perhaps Anne to mention. This is a piece, just quickly introduce it. This is a piece over on make.wordpress.org by Joe Seffer entitled Full Site Editing Scope for WordPress 5.8. So what's all this about?
This is a really exciting post. I am thrilled it's out. But it's basically covering, April has 2 go and no-go dates. And this is basically where project leadership is coming together to figure out what will the scope of what's shipped in 5.8 look like and what work can be done between now and then to make it possible. And Josepha really wonderfully lays out the plan. And part of the plan is actually this week, 4 different people from Matt, Matthias, Josepha, and Helen are all going to gather to do a demo and talk about what full sighting looks like right now, and then figure out from there what can possibly be included in 5.8. And one of the things I really appreciate in this post is it touches it, I think in this section, it says, this part of the FSE merge will not change the user's default experience, but will instead focus on bringing tools to the extenders in our community so they can experiment with their users in mind. So essentially what that's saying is that 5.8, as of now and where things stand, is going to focus on bringing the design tools and the tools that like theme authors and plugin authors can actually use. And then 5.9 will be more of the user facing. So it actually gives the extender community time to adapt. And I think that's going to be huge. I run the FSE outreach program, so we do a lot of testing. And I'm really happy to say that a lot of that testing and feedback that we got from people in the community who took the time to test and be involved helped influence these kinds of decisions to figure out what's actually ready and what's not. And I think it mentions, if you scroll up, perhaps, down. Haven't memorized the post. But yeah, it says the later dates, polishing these components have been moved out of the focus for 5.8 for proper prioritization. And like making the saving flow more intuitive was a big piece of feedback that came up in the FSC outreach program. So it's really neat to see this. The demo is going to be this week, and I'm very curious to see what comes out of the demo and the discussion. There's another go, no go date at the end of the month on April 27th. These both align with Gutenberg releases as well. And I think after then, there'll be a lot more clarity. So stay tuned for end of April and get excited for 5.8. I think this is going to be really big, especially because the users won't be impacted directly, so to speak, unless they like hyper opt into this. But it allows the extenders to kind of let loose and have fun and see what they can build with the new design tools that the core team has been working so hard on.
Anne, can I just give you a chance to plug? Well, plug's the wrong word, but just talk about the outreach program and how people get on board if they're curious to shape the destiny of full site editing.
Love to talk about the outreach program. So basically the outreach program is dedicated to getting feedback about the full sighting experience to the developers who are working on it. And it's also become a bit of an education tool. So people can jump in and just listen if they'd rather, or keep up to date with the latest stuff without actually testing. But at the core of it, it's about testing the actual experience and go through testing flows. And so I release calls for testing. We're about to start our 5th one this week. It'll actually be on query blocks, which might tie in nicely with another piece. But it's essentially meant to help tie that feedback loop and help in these decision points to know what's ready and what's not. And you can join, it's very easy. You can join just by jumping into Make Slack. So if you search like Making WordPress Slack, you'll find a place where you can sign up. And then there's just a dedicated channel called FSE Outreach Experiment. The other way you could possibly follow along is following the Make Test site, which is just make.wordpress.org/test. I post the calls for testing there. I'm also starting to do some what I call hallway hangouts where people can just jump on and we can chat about FSC related items. I just did my first one last week, but I'm hoping to do those more in the future to tap into that kind of educational piece and discussion piece. Because I think there's a lot of, there's been a lot of curiosity and fear around FSC. And I kind of want to demystify that. And I think this post from Josefa does a really good job of showing how the community is trying to move forward in a way that allows everyone to come with, which is really exciting.
I'm going to ask you one more thing on the FSC outreach program. Sorry, if somebody comes to over to the Make Slack and commits themselves mentally, I'm going to help out. What may be a time commitment for something useful to give back to you? What would they be actually doing, and how long may they give up in minutes or hours?
I mean, how long does it take to read my post? I would say I try to make the calls for testing, if you're actually going through them, 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. But you have to read the post, you have to set up a test site. So like in actuality, I would safely say like 30 minutes to an hour, depending upon your ability and your technical ability. But one thing I'm also trying to experiment with is possibly holding office hours. So if people get stuck or need help with a test site, I can kind of jump in and help them out. But I haven't done that yet. It's a lot of work to do the calls for testing and the summary posts and then these high level posts on top of everything else. But yeah, I would say 30 minutes to an hour. But any time you can give, even if it's like, yeah, I tried this for 10 minutes and here are my thoughts, I welcome it. I know time is very precious. So
thank you for clarifying all of that. That's great. Joe, Paul?
You can spend more time. You can spend more time, because you can have a look at what the other people wrote in response. And that's one of the aspects I enjoyed about getting involved in that was, you read the post, you set up the test site, you have a go with it, and you can spend as much time as you want playing around the kind of challenge that's set to you by Anne. And so you can see, for instance, Justin Tadlock, he's often taking on these tests and he's publishing his results on the Dopey Tavern website.
I love his posts.
And I would say
he's always very sassy.
And I think he does more effort than because what he does, instead of just what I did was I just followed the instructions, went through it, and I just took the experience for what it was and fed back what I felt. But Justin goes a step further, and some of the other people do as well, in that he tries to make the example look great as well. So he's kind of like, I made a 404 page, but I could really use this 404 page in real life. This isn't just, I did what was there. But then you see the thread of comments in GitHub or wherever you want to post the different your feedback to, and you can see other people saying the same kind of thing as you, and you do feel, right, I'm going to comment in support of that comment over there because I totally agree with what that person has said. And I know that was really useful to Anne and the team because she fed back to us all that, and I could see the stuff that the small group of people who got involved, I saw that have an influence on the next steps. And I can see in that blog post from Josefa, Josefa's talking about getting the extenders involved. And I know that was something that myself and other people were worried about, and we were trying to come to terms with, why is this got to go into core? And the fact is, we don't need to worry. It's going to go into core. That's always going to happen at some point. And it's not going into a core so that everybody's user experience suddenly goes crazy and Wix can do another advert about a disaster or something like that. It's like Anne said, no one's really going to see it. It's there for the people like Extendify, Munir Kamal and his products. It's just people like that and Toolset and theme creators and plugin creators to say, it's in core now. I'm not interacting with a plugin in Gutenberg. I'm interacting with the core set of WordPress for my experiments and the products that I'm building. So I think it's cool. The other thing I'd say as well is that I think it's helping, and the more outreach and that happens, and the more people I think that get involved that aren't necessarily the, like I would call, it's probably the wrong word, but the inner circle in Slack as such, the people who are naturally in Slack all the time, because I'm not. I came in there and was trying to figure out what I was going and everything. I think the more the word can get spread out a little bit more, I think it reduces the fear, because me and Nathan were talking about this earlier this week. The block editor at Gutenberg, full site editing, is not going to destroy page builders, and page builders are not going to beat the block editor. It is not a zero-sum fight, and Wix isn't going to destroy WordPress, and WordPress isn't going to destroy Wix. There are millions of people who like to do things the way they do them, and there will always be a product, whether it's a big product or a small product or the core set of WordPress, that is going to work for it. So I think the stress of this whole full site editing and the changes in WordPress for me is just reducing all the time. I'm just less concerned about it. And for anyone who is concerned about it, just go and take part in the full site editing, have a little chat with some of the people involved, and you'll see. It's not as conspiracy theory as we might all think.
I appreciate you saying that. I totally, I'm like nodding along the whole time. I totally agree.
Hey, Joe, anything? Are you all sorted? What? Just for those of you that are listening to this, Joe's like the consummate professional. There are things technologically it would appear not functioning as he would quite like, but being Joe, he's totally on top of it. He's got 6 or 7 different options available to him. If my camera goes, I'm doomed. That's it. It's all over. But
thank you. I thought I was really being clever. I have a little app on my phone that relays the camera feed. It also relays the notifications of setting me, which is why I managed to switch back. But thank you, I appreciate that. Again, I agree with everything that's been said here. I love and how open the process has been, because there is a lot of nervousness, a lot of consternation around it, and I'm using full site editing regularly. I'm trying to do it at least monthly on my live stream or in a YouTube video.
Your YouTube videos are awesome. I was so stoked when I saw the custom for. I was like, yes, this is fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And it's largely a really good experience. I loved creating that 404 page. And this week on the docket, I know is last week's challenge. But I'm just, I love everything you're doing. I love how open everything is, and I'm happy to see the core team trying very hard to get this right, because it is super important. I think Matt said in the State of the Word, right? We need to get phases 1 and 2 right, otherwise 3 and 4 are doomed. And I really see how much you do want to get this right.
Especially with 40% of the web. And one of the things I've noticed is there's like the 40% of the web piece, and then there's also just engaging people in contributions is really hard right now. Like, people are going through a lot.
Yeah.
So there's this dance to get right. And I think this is where moving forward sustainably and ethically is really, really ever more important, especially as WordPress's share of the market grows. So I'm very excited by the decision process that's happening, and I'm very curious to see how the demo goes this week with project leadership.
I think the 40% of the web piece is a bit that gets lost, isn't it? The other proprietary page builders, they really don't have to worry about 40% of the web. They've got to worry about their own users, and they probably know an awful lot about them, whereas you, in many cases, don't know a great deal about who's using it and what array of plugins they've got and how it may break things. So yeah, point well made. It's harder for you, I would imagine, by a country mile. Paul, do you want to do this? Shall we do this query block bit, or do you think time's pressing us? Yeah, should we do it?
Yeah,
okay.
I think.
In which case, I'm just going to introduce it. I feel Anne. It's like Anne is primed to feature a lot today. So this is a piece over on WP Tavern. It's called Calling All Themers, Design the Next Round of Query Block Patterns, and it basically it brings to us the fact that these are coming in the near future. He's, as Justin always is, he takes things to pieces and gives it a thorough grilling. But as this is not an area of my expertise, but it is for you, Anne, I'm just going to give it to you if that's all right.
No, that's great. I actually am working on the next call for testing for full siting on the query block. I'm coming up, I think Query Quest is what I'm going to call it. I don't know. I haven't figured out a good, I like to have fun names because it's, you got to have fun with this stuff. It's cool. It's cool to be on like the cutting edge. But yeah, the query block is kind of what I would call like a power user tool, or like we think of it more as a theme author tool where users will more interact with a variation, kind of like a post list block or a latest post. But you can see, this preview is what it currently looks like, which isn't, there's a lot left to be desired with some of this design. But a lot of what's being talked about in this post is how can we set up these initial patterns in a way that helps guide the user and actually create like a delightful experience. Like, how do we set people up for success with these initial patterns. And right now there's an open GitHub issue, which is what the post is about, asking for people to share what sort of patterns they want to see. And Justin he has a really good comment on there that basically is saying, we can't predict, like the community can't predict everything that people need. I think it's like, I wrote it down. Yeah, the Gutenberg team cannot know everything it needs to build without this vital community source. And I want to really underscore that because that is very much the truth. A lot of the people who are commenting on the GitHub issue are WordPress insiders. And I'd love to see some folks from in the community share directly what they want to see with these patterns, what they're noticing on the web. Because how cool would it be if a really common pattern that you see across the web that's on really cool websites could be integrated directly into Core as an immediate placeholder setup option? I think that would be a really amazing experience. So I highly encourage, if anyone has, maybe they're like a power blogger who really loves to blog and pays attention to a lot of sites, like share what you're seeing, share what you're noticing. And who knows, maybe it'll make it into Core or make it into future. The pattern directory is coming up as well, which I'm very excited about. And maybe it'll be a block pattern that could exist there. So
I'm showing on the screen right now. There you go, Paul. There's Justin sort of making it look really nice. I think he borrowed some inspiration from Mel.
Yeah.
But it's nice. Okay, thank you for that. Joe or Paul?
Seems like there's a good opportunity to get your name in the history books if you can contribute some great query block patterns, for instance. But I think what I'd like about this, and also an item that I did remove, but maybe you've still got the link there. There was a new theme called the Michelle theme. Is it?
I do. I still have it. I'll put it on the screen.
As in the name Michelle. Yeah.
Yep.
And so what I like about this, because you've got Wix, you've got the hosting companies creating their platforms, and then really you at the heart of it, you could say that the core team is trying to constantly create an alternative to you getting locked into these sort of things. And you see something like the Michelle theme come out, and it shipped with something like 67 block patterns.
Right. Yep.
And I think that is a really cool thing, because what you've got there is you've got a framework of a theme using the block editor, but it's already thought out the design process that you probably need if you like the look of this particular website. Now, Matt Medeiros did a podcast the other day about his favorite WordPress themes, which is usually a kind of clickbait sort of title. But I can't remember the theme that he was talking about, but it was similar to this in a way that the theme author had said, this is what this theme is really good at. And I'm giving you all the options to do that really easily within the theme. If you want to go outside of that, you probably want to be kind of skilled in some way, in a technical way or a design way. But if you want to use the theme as I intended it, I'm giving you all the options here. So this Michelle theme has come with some things that kind of lean towards how I see the future of full site editing as well. Because what we've got here on the screen at the moment is that within the theme, you can identify a block-based footer or a block-based 404 page. So it seems to me that whether or not you like the interface that the core team create for full site editing, that the third parties will probably not even have you use that interface if you are a no-code or a low-code kind of person. You'll be coming in. The plugins that allow you to create your websites will be hooking into the full site editing experience, but you won't see it. It will be like this in this side panel of what we can see on the screen at the moment, where it will have a little wizard, create your footer. Here's some examples. There you go. Here's footer number 1, footer number 2, footer number 3. I'll have footer number 3. Okay, that's the one you've chosen. Let's now go and create your header. So I can see that block patterns and onboarding experiences and wizards and third parties can work together to